Ardennes, Belgium, December 16, 1944. A thick fog hung over the snow-dusted forests of the Ardennes. Pines creaked under the weight of ice. The frozen ground reflected the pale winter sun. Silence dominated the landscape, broken only by distant rumblings, the low growl of German tanks rolling through narrow, winding roads, their engines muffled by the mist. Soldiers crouched in foxholes, rifles clutched tightly, breath visible in the frigid air, hearts pounding in anticipation. The Allies had grown confident. Months of pushing back German forces across Europe had made American troops believe the war was nearly won. And yet, in the heart of the Ardennes, the German army struck with ruthless precision. Commanders laughed quietly among themselves, convinced that the Americans were unprepared for the sudden winter offensive. Overhead, the sky threatened more than snow. Recon planes traced lines through the clouds, catching glimpses of columns advancing through frozen villages. Below, artillery pieces were positioned, ready to erupt in devastating fire. The stage was set for chaos, a battle that would test courage, endurance, and resolve. The laughter of the Germans masked a grim determination. But soon, that confidence would collide with the harsh reality of American resilience, leaving a trail of destruction and a chilling reckoning in the Ardennes. By late 1944, the tide of war in Western Europe had shifted decisively. Allied forces had liberated France after the success of the Normandy invasion and were pushing relentlessly toward Germany. Supply lines stretched across liberated territories, bringing men, tanks, artillery, and aircraft to the front in ever-increasing quantities. The Germans were reeling, their cities threatened, their resources dwindling, and their morale strained. Yet, in the quiet moments between engagements, their leadership still harbored illusions of resurgence. Hermann Göring and the Luftwaffe, though battered, remained symbols of German air might, while Hitler clung to the belief that one bold offensive could reverse the Allies' momentum. His gaze turned toward the Ardennes, a dense forest region considered lightly defended by the Americans. German commanders identified a weak point, thinly spread divisions, winter conditions that limited reconnaissance, and the element of surprise. Hitler envisioned a decisive thrust that could split the Allied lines, capture critical supply depots, and force a negotiated peace. ***** Across the line, American troops were confident but overextended. They had advanced hundreds of miles from Normandy, liberating villages and cities with each step. Supply depots and hospitals had been hastily established, and inexperienced troops filled gaps where veterans had fallen or been rotated. Their focus was forward, on the push into Germany, leaving the Ardennes quiet, almost serene. Yet beneath this calm lay vulnerability. Communications were stretched, and winter conditions made movement and resupply difficult. American intelligence had intercepted hints of German buildup, but the scale and timing remained uncertain. Winter exercises in 1944 had seemed routine, a seasonal test rather than preparation for a major offensive. Supply trucks rattled along snow-covered roads, and soldiers huddled in makeshift barracks, unaware that their positions were about to be tested in the most brutal way. ***** In Berlin, Hitler's directives were clear: strike hard, strike fast, and exploit the perceived weaknesses in the Allied line. Panzer divisions, reinforced and refitted, were readied in secrecy. Infantry was ordered to advance under cover of fog and darkness, while engineers prepared bridges and paths through the dense forest. The German command relied on surprise, terrain familiarity, and winter conditions to offset the Allies' superior numbers and firepower. Logistics became a masterstroke and a gamble. Fuel shortages, snow, and icy roads threatened mobility, yet the Germans pressed on, convinced that a rapid breakthrough could outpace any logistical failure. Propaganda within their ranks emphasized the audacity of the offensive, framing it as a glorious strike that would restore German honor. Soldiers, however, understood the stakes differently. The Ardennes would be unforgiving, and winter itself a formidable adversary. ***** The Luftwaffe's diminished presence and Allied air superiority influenced tactical planning. German commanders knew that air attacks would be limited by weather, while American reconnaissance planes could detect large troop movements in clear skies. Armor and artillery had to be coordinated carefully, relying on ground reconnaissance and radio communications that could fail in dense forests. Each decision was a balance of risk and reward, precision and speed, with the ultimate goal of overwhelming American defenses before counterattacks could be mounted. The Ardennes Offensive, later named the Battle of the Bulge, represented a convergence of desperation, ambition, and strategy. German commanders relied on audacity, Allies relied on preparation, and both sides faced a winter landscape that would magnify every error and elevate every act of courage. The forest was still, cloaked in frost and darkness. German troops moved silently along snow-covered roads, the crunch of boots masked by distant artillery. Tanks rumbled in tight formations, their tracks leaving deep impressions in the frozen earth. Commanders checked maps by dim lantern light, plotting routes through narrow passes and dense woods. Each column moved with careful precision, aware that any misstep could betray the element of surprise. American outposts, lightly manned and spread thin across the Ardennes, detected some movements but dismissed them as routine German patrols. Snowfall muffled sounds and dense pine trees blocked line-of-sight reconnaissance. Radio reports trickled in sporadically, and weather conditions prevented consistent aerial observation. In the quiet, the Germans advanced, a force calculated to strike fear, disrupt supply lines, and force the Allies into reactive combat, before the main offensive. German scouts and small infantry units probed the American defenses. These skirmishes were brief but effective. Isolated outposts were overwhelmed, communication lines disrupted, and confusion seeded among American ranks. Commanders scrambled to assess the scale of the threat, but the fog of war, both literal and metaphorical, obscured clarity. At dawn, artillery began to thunder across the Ardennes. Snowflakes danced in the blasts of German howitzers and mortar, mingling with the cries of soldiers caught unprepared. Villages and crossroads became focal points of sudden, intense engagement. Americans fought bravely, improvising defenses and using whatever cover they could find among frozen trees. Overturned vehicles and snowdrifts. For American troops. The first hours of the attack were bewildering. Confidence in Allied momentum clashed with the sudden intensity of the German assault. Radio communications crackled with fragmented reports, creating uncertainty and fear. Soldiers, trained for months to advance across Europe, now found themselves on the defensive in a snow-laden forest, facing a determined enemy exploiting the very terrain they considered secure. For German forces, the initial hours were charged with expectation. There was pride in precision and fear of failure, both magnified by the frigid cold. Commanders understood the stakes. This offensive could turn the war in the West if successful, or lead to devastating losses if stalled. Every movement, every decision carried the weight of national and personal consequence. Despite the chaos, the broader strategic picture remained hidden to both sides. The Allies were unaware that the German thrust would carve a pronounced bulge into their lines, temporarily displacing units, capturing towns, and threatening vital supply routes. The Germans, meanwhile, believed that surprise and audacity could compensate for deficiencies in fuel, coordination, and air support. Winter, forest, and fog created a stage where calculation and chance intertwined. The Ardennes became a crucible where training, courage, and leadership would be tested in equal measure. Soldiers on both sides faced not only enemy fire but the merciless environment, freezing temperatures, snow-laden forests, and the ever-present threat of isolation from reinforcements. As daylight broke fully over the Ardennes, the scope of the German attack became apparent. Columns of tanks, infantry, and artillery advanced with shocking speed. American command began to comprehend the magnitude of the offensive. The calm before the storm had ended. The stage was set for one of the most brutal and decisive engagements of the European theater. Ardennes, December 17, 1944, morning, the snow-covered Ardennes had transformed overnight into a war zone. German tanks forged through frozen roads, their tracks crushing trees and debris in their path. Infantry advanced in tight formations, their breath steaming in the bitter cold. Artillery roared, shaking the earth and sending plumes of smoke into the gray winter sky. Villages along the route were quickly overtaken, roads jammed with wrecked vehicles, and the first signs of panic rippled through American lines. American commanders, initially believing the attacks were probes or minor offensives, now grasped the scale of the assault. Forward units reported encirclements and supply disruptions. Radio chatter was frantic, with fragmented reports of German advances and captured positions. Reinforcements were dispatched, but the dense forest, icy terrain, and sudden fog slowed movement, forcing units to navigate unfamiliar routes under enemy fire. Both sides faced extreme logistical challenges. German units had relied on surprise, but the harsh winter and snow-laden roads impeded fuel and ammunition delivery. Tank columns stalled, and infantry often marched for miles with heavy packs in sub-zero temperatures. Meanwhile, American units struggled to maintain communication and distribute supplies across disrupted lines. Trucks became immobilized in icy ditches, while field hospitals contended with frostbite casualties and battle injuries. The battle of logistics was as fierce as the combat itself. For the Americans, rapid improvisation became critical. Small groups of soldiers were tasked with reopening roads, rescuing stranded units, and maintaining morale under chaotic conditions. For the Germans, every delay threatened the integrity of their ambitious offensive. Time, more than enemy firepower, became a decisive factor. The Luftwaffe's presence was minimal due to prior losses and the Allies' control of the skies. Allied aircraft, however, were grounded in heavy snow and fog, limiting their ability to provide reconnaissance or air support. This temporary leveling of the air war allowed German forces to advance with reduced fear of air strikes, amplifying the initial shock of the offensive. Commanders on both sides understood that once skies cleared, aircraft would reassert their dominance, potentially shifting momentum once again. For American troops, the first day of the German offensive was a baptism of fire. The sudden intensity of the attack, combined with isolation and harsh weather, tested nerves and discipline. Soldiers huddled in foxholes, exchanging hurried orders, firing from concealed positions, and improvising defenses. Many were inexperienced, having replaced veterans lost during previous campaigns. Yet the resolve of small units, combined with rapid adaptation, prevented the collapse of entire sectors. For German troops, morale was initially high. Successes in the opening hours validated their training and planning. However, doubts lingered. Supply shortages, unpredictable weather, and the enormity of the terrain meant that any hesitation could turn advantage into disaster. Leadership was critical, with officers maintaining discipline and momentum while navigating both terrain and logistical nightmares. As the day progressed, American command began to coordinate countermeasures. Reserve divisions were rerouted, artillery was concentrated on key choke points, and communication lines reestablished. Headquarters realized that the Ardennes offensive was not a limited probe but a full-scale assault designed to fracture the Allied front. The U.S. Army rapidly implemented defensive lines, improvising fortifications in forests and villages, and deploying tanks to slow German advances. The first day ended with a grim realization: the Germans had achieved tactical surprise, but sustaining momentum would prove difficult. The Ardennes was a battlefield of extremes, frozen forests, sudden ambushes, and a collision between audacity and endurance. The initial phase of the Battle of the Bulge revealed both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the opposing forces. Surprise and determination had allowed the Germans to penetrate deep into Allied lines, but logistical challenges, weather, and the resilience of American troops foreshadowed a prolonged and brutal struggle. The next section will explore the story from multiple perspectives: human, tactical, technological, and psychological, revealing the complexity of this pivotal engagement. ********. The Ardennes winter was merciless. American and German soldiers alike faced sub-zero temperatures, snowdrifts that swallowed boots, and icy winds that cut through even the thickest uniform layers. For many, the environment was as deadly as enemy fire. Foxholes filled with snow, artillery barrages sent fragments of frozen earth into the air, and frostbite silently claimed those unprepared. Yet, in the midst of this, acts of human resilience emerged. A medic trudged through knee-deep snow to reach wounded men. Infantrymen improvised sleds to carry the injured to field hospitals. Small squads held critical crossroads against overwhelming odds. Fear and fatigue were constant companions, but camaraderie and shared purpose forged a fragile, yet unbreakable, human chain. *****. The Germans relied on speed, surprise, and precision. Panzer divisions moved through forested roads, infantry advanced alongside them, and artillery pounded Allied positions before ground troops arrived. The plan aimed to create a wedge in the Allied line, capture key supply depots, and destabilize command structures. German commanders exploited terrain knowledge and winter conditions, believing that snow, fog, and narrow passes would delay American reinforcements. Early successes reinforced this confidence, and tactical ingenuity was apparent in the coordination of tanks, infantry, and artillery. Yet the plan carried risk. Fuel shortages, icy roads, and extended supply lines threatened to halt momentum. Every decision in these early hours could determine whether the offensive would succeed or collapse under its own weight. *****. The Battle of the Bulge highlighted the interplay of technology and terrain. German tanks, including Panzer IVS and the formidable Tiger I, relied on firepower and armor to dominate roadways and forest clearings. American forces deployed Sherman tanks, Emperor artillery, and portable anti-tank weapons, which, though outgunned individually, became effective in coordinated defense. Weapons performance was affected by the cold, lubricants thickened, engines struggled, and visibility was reduced by snow and fog. Yet American ingenuity often compensated for technical limitations. Improvised artillery placements, mobile anti-tank teams, and coordinated small-unit actions exploited weaknesses in German formations. Technology shaped the battlefield, but human adaptation determined its ultimate effectiveness. *****. Leadership played a decisive role in shaping the battle's early hours. German officers, executing Hitler's orders, balanced audacity with caution, ensuring that troops advanced while minimizing exposure to counterattacks. American commanders faced a chaotic picture: broken communications, fragmented reports, and an enemy advancing faster than anticipated. Decisions had to be made quickly, often with incomplete information. Leaders like General Anthony McAuliffe in Bastogne exemplified adaptability and morale building, issuing orders that combined pragmatism with inspiration. Leadership under these conditions was less about strategy and theory and more about real-time problem solving under life-threatening pressure. *****. The psychological dimension defined both sides. Germans began the offensive confident, their plans meticulously crafted and rehearsed. Soldiers believed in the possibility of a rapid breakthrough that could turn the course of the war. For Americans, the surprise and intensity of the attack created confusion, fear, and uncertainty. Maintaining morale under such conditions required small victories, holding a crossroads, repelling an armored advance, or reinforcing a vulnerable flank. The human mind, exposed to relentless bombardment, freezing conditions, and the unknown scale of the enemy, became a battlefield of its own. Courage, panic, and endurance intertwined to determine who would survive, adapt, or falter. *****. The early human experience. tactical ingenuity, technological capabilities, and psychological resilience all contributed to the first phase of the Battle of the Bulge, yet these angles only reveal part of the story. The subsequent hours would test logistics, air power, and strategic foresight and reveal the full complexity of a battle that would become a defining moment in the European theater. For German commanders, the Ardennes represented an audacious gamble. Months of retreat and defensive operations had bruised morale and strained resources. Hitler's plan promised redemption, a rapid thrust that could fracture Allied lines, capture supply depots, and possibly force negotiations. On the ground, soldiers believed in the clarity of orders and the precision of their objectives, yet uncertainty gnawed at many. Snow-laden forests slowed movement, and the sheer scale of the offensive stretched communication networks thin. Units often operated in isolation, relying on maps, scouts, and instinct to navigate treacherous terrain. For some German soldiers, the offensive felt like a test of skill and courage. For others, it was a desperate endeavor driven more by ideology and command than by practical hope. The disparity between high command confidence and frontline reality foreshadowed the difficulties to come. *****, the Ardennes challenged ethical and moral decision-making in the heat of battle. American and German officers alike faced choices that balanced survival, orders, and humanity. Soldiers encountered civilians caught in crossfire, villages shelled for strategic reasons, and wounded comrades left exposed in freezing snow. Commanders had to weigh the urgency of military objectives against human cost. For American leaders, defending Bastogne and other key towns required sending men into near impossible situations, a choice between strategic necessity and immediate human risk. For German officers, advancing through winter forests and civilian areas amplified the moral burden, knowing that the success of the offensive could cost thousands of lives for temporary gains. The human conscience, tested in these extreme conditions, became a silent yet decisive factor in the battle. ****, logistical realities shaped the offensive more than any individual act of bravery. German panzer divisions required fuel, artillery needed ammunition, and infantry depended on continuous resupply. Icy roads, snow, and forested terrain hindered movement, slowing columns and threatening operational cohesion. American forces, though initially caught off guard, leveraged supply depots and interior lines to coordinate reinforcements, artillery barrages, and counterattacks. Coordination between infantry, armor, and artillery, often improvised, became a decisive factor. The Ardennes demonstrated that operational success depended as much on managing resources and timing as on firepower or strategy. A single supply delay or miscommunication could halt a division, turning early gains into vulnerability. *****, both sides had to adapt technology to harsh winter conditions. Tanks stalled in snowdrifts, artillery crews faced frozen shells, and communication equipment malfunctioned in sub-zero temperatures. Yet human ingenuity often compensated. American soldiers built impromptu bridges to recover stranded tanks, while German engineers used explosives to clear blocked roads. Anti-tank teams created traps in forests, exploiting terrain to offset the numerical or armor advantage of enemy units. Cold, snow, and limited visibility magnified every mechanical flaw and every tactical choice, turning minor details into critical determinants of survival. *****, American and German troops experienced intense psychological strain. The suddenness of the German offensive and the chaos of the Ardennes tested nerves and decision-making. For Americans, the realization that entire towns and key positions were at risk required extraordinary discipline and resolve. Small units became critical linchpins. Holding a single crossroads could determine whether German advances continued unchecked. German soldiers, despite initial confidence, faced fatigue, freezing conditions, and stretched lines that threatened cohesion. The mental toll of constant movement, artillery barrages, and the ever-present threat of encirclement weighed on both sides. Psychological endurance proved as decisive as tactical skill, by the second and third days of the Ardennes offensive. Initial movements had created shock and disruption, but the interplay of logistics, terrain, morale, and human resilience set the stage for the pivotal moments that would define the battle. The early advantages gained by the Germans would soon meet the full scale of Allied adaptation and counterattack. The next section will bring us to the climax where strategy, courage, and circumstance collide in the defining hours of the Battle of the Bulge. Bastogne and the Ardennes, December 20th to 22nd, 1944. The siege intensifies, snowdrifts reached the height of a man, and the wind cut through layers of wool and leather. The town of Bastogne had become a fortress of necessity. Streets were barricaded with rubble, artillery positions braced behind snowbanks, and machine gun nests covered every approach. American troops dug deeper, improvised defenses with whatever materials were at hand, and used the forests as natural cover to harass German columns. German forces, undeterred by the initial setbacks, pressed their assault with ferocity. Tiger and Panzer for tanks moved into position, supported by infantry trained to clear fortified positions. Artillery barrages continued to pummel American defenses, while supply shortages began to sap energy and morale. Commanders on both sides understood that the coming days would test endurance, skill, and courage like never before. By December 23rd, the weather cleared sufficiently for Allied aircraft to intervene. P-47 Thunderbolts swooped down on German columns, strafing vehicles and supply lines, while B-17 bombers targeted artillery positions. The sudden presence of air support caused panic among German forces, who had counted on snow and fog to shield their advance. American soldiers, once isolated and encircled, now had crucial assistance, turning the psychological tide. The combination of persistent ground defense and aerial intervention began to blunt the German momentum. American reinforcements, including elements of General Patton's Third Army, began to push toward Bastogne. The relief forces navigated icy roads and forested terrain under threat of ambush, yet their arrival strengthened defensive positions and bolstered morale. Small unit engagements erupted along forested approaches, and every roadblock, ridge, and village became a contested battlefield. German columns, already stretched thin, faced increasingly coordinated resistance. Supplies dwindled, and tank crews struggled with immobilized vehicles and depleted fuel reserves. The human dimension of the battle reached its peak. Soldiers on both sides fought in near impossible conditions. Frostbite, hunger, exhaustion, and constant danger were relentless companions. Medics treated injuries in frozen dugouts. Engineers repaired roads under fire. Infantrymen held positions for days without relief. The defiance of American soldiers in Bastogne became emblematic of resilience. While German troops, though trained and disciplined, faced the psychological weight of stalled progress and the growing presence of Allied reinforcements. By December 24th, the full scale of the Ardennes offensive had become apparent. German forces had penetrated deep into Allied lines but had overextended themselves, depleted supplies, and faced increasing resistance. The momentum that had characterized the opening days had dissipated. American defensive ingenuity, reinforced by fresh troops and overwhelming firepower, stabilized key positions. Bastogne remained in Allied hands, a symbolic and strategic victory that marked the turning point of the battle. The toll was staggering. Thousands of men were killed, wounded, or captured on both sides. Villages and towns were reduced to rubble, and forests scarred by artillery and tank tracks bore witness to the violence of modern mechanized warfare. The Ardennes, once a quiet and remote region, had become a crucible of human endurance, tactical brilliance, and technological confrontation. The climax of the Battle of the Bulge revealed the limits of German planning and the indomitable spirit of American forces. The initial surprise had been countered, reinforcements had arrived, and the tide of battle had shifted. The following section will explore the aftermath, examining the human, strategic, and psychological consequences of this pivotal engagement, and how it reshaped the course of the war in Western Europe. Bastogne, December 19, 1944. Dawn. Snow fell in relentless sheets over the Ardennes. Roads were clogged with immobilized vehicles, some German, some American. The town of Bastogne, a strategic crossroads, became the focal point of the German advance. Panzer columns approached from the west, their engines growling, treads grinding against frozen mud and broken pavement. Infantry followed, rifles at the ready, faces grim beneath frost-covered helmets. American forces, vastly outnumbered, prepared a defense that seemed almost impossible. General Anthony McAuliffe, newly assigned to the 101st Airborne Division, surveyed his troops and the surrounding terrain. His orders were simple yet daunting: hold Bastogne at all costs. Foxholes were reinforced with sandbags and debris, artillery positioned to cover every approach, and supply caches organized despite the freezing cold. Morale was fragile, but determination ran deep. The men understood that the crossroads represented not just a tactical point, but the lifeline for all Allied forces in the Ardennes. By mid-morning, German artillery opened fire. Shells tore through frozen trees, sending shards of ice and splintered wood into the air. Tanks advanced, supported by infantry, firing into buildings and barricades. The Americans responded with anti-tank weapons, machine gun fire, and improvised defenses. Each street, each intersection became a deadly chessboard where one misstep could mean annihilation. Smoke mingled with snow, reducing visibility to mere meters. The sound was deafening: engines, artillery, gunfire, and the cries of men echoing across the town. German commanders pushed relentlessly. They believed that breaking Bastogne would allow them to sweep southward, cutting off American divisions and securing a decisive victory. Yet American soldiers, though outnumbered, held their ground. Small squads moved between buildings, laying ambushes and striking with precision. Supply shortages forced ingenuity. Melted snow became water. Captured German ammunition supplemented scarce stocks. And every soldier was pressed to multitask as scout, medic, and combatant. The human dimension of the battle intensified. Fear and exhaustion battled with courage and purpose. Soldiers saw comrades fall, sometimes inches away, yet advanced or held positions against overwhelming odds. McAuliffe, aware of the untenable situation, issued a single, defiant reply to German demands for surrender: nuts. This simple word encapsulated the American resolve and defiance, a spark that inspired men to fight beyond expectation. German troops, confronted with unexpected resistance, faced frustration, doubt, and fatigue, even as their own officers pressured them to press forward. Weather initially grounded Allied air support. But as the snow briefly cleared, P-47 Thunderbolts and B-17s provided critical strikes against German columns. Artillery from nearby American units targeted supply routes and advancing armor, slowing the German momentum. Tanks became both shield and spear, engaging in close-quarter duels in frozen fields and forest clearings. The combination of artillery, air power, and defensive positioning turned Bastogne into a crucible of modern warfare, a collision of firepower, strategy, and human endurance. Commanders on both sides faced split-second choices. McAuliffe coordinated defenses under constant bombardment, rerouting reinforcements and prioritizing objectives that could stall German advances. German officers adjusted attack vectors in real time, trying to exploit weaknesses without overextending their forces. Communication lines were strained. Radios failed in the cold. Runners risked their lives delivering orders. And every decision carried the weight of potential disaster. By nightfall, German advances had slowed. Bastogne remained in American hands, though battered and encircled. Supply shortages, freezing conditions, and determined resistance had prevented the Germans from achieving their strategic breakthrough. The clash of preparation versus surprise, courage versus calculation, and endurance versus momentum had left both sides blooded. Yet neither decisively victorious. *******. The initial stand at Bastogne demonstrated the limits of German planning and the resilience of American defense. Yet the battle was far from over. Over the next days, reinforcements, counterattacks, and brutal winter conditions would escalate the conflict, culminating in a turning point that would define the outcome of the Ardennes offensive. Ardennes, January 1945. Quiet after the storm, snow still blanketed the Ardennes, but silence had replaced the roar of engines, artillery, and gunfire. The forests, scarred by shellfire and tank treads, stood as somber witnesses to a battle that had tested the limits of human endurance. Soldiers, exhausted yet alive, moved cautiously through the landscape, clearing debris, tending to the wounded, and reflecting on what had transpired. The air was cold, but a quiet sense of survival and determination lingered. The Battle of the Bulge was more than a confrontation of armies. It was a testament to resilience and ingenuity. American soldiers, encircled and outnumbered, held against a formidable German offensive, turning despair into defiance. Leaders made split-second decisions that balanced strategy, morale, and humanity, exemplifying the complex interplay between command and human courage. Every frozen foxhole, every barricaded street, and every act of improvised defense contributed to a larger story of perseverance. Strategically, the Ardennes marked the final gasp of German initiative. In the West, the failure of the offensive accelerated the collapse of the Wehrmacht and allowed Allied forces to maintain momentum toward Germany's heartland. Tactically, it demonstrated the vital importance of combined arms, adaptability, and logistical foresight, lessons that continue to inform military doctrine. Psychologically, it revealed the profound impact of morale, leadership, and human spirit in determining outcomes. Even when material odds seem insurmountable, yet beyond strategy and tactics, the battle leaves a human legacy. Thousands of soldiers endured unimaginable conditions. Civilians witnessed the destructive reach of modern warfare. Communities rebuilt lives amidst the remnants of conflict. The Ardennes reminds us that war is not merely a clash of machines and plans, but a collision of human resilience, fear, courage, and choice. In the quiet that followed the snow-laden forests, one truth stood clear: the Ardennes had forged a testament to endurance, to leadership under pressure, and to the indomitable spirit of those who refused to yield. History would remember not only the blood and destruction, but also the courage that defined this turning point. The Bulge was a massacre, a trial, and a triumph, a singular episode that reshaped the course of World War II and left a lasting imprint on the human story of war. Ardennes, January 1st to 15th, 1945. Recovery and strategic reassessment. The first weeks of January revealed the full scope of the German failure. Surviving units struggled to reorganize, their ranks thinned by casualties and desertion. Tanks and artillery that had been damaged or abandoned during the offensive were largely unrecoverable. Supply shortages, compounded by winter conditions, made replenishment nearly impossible. German commanders recognized the strategic vulnerability of their Western Front and began defensive consolidation rather than further offensive maneuvers. Allied forces, though exhausted, leveraged their logistical depth and intact command networks to stabilize the front. Resupply convoys restored ammunition, food, and medical aid, while repair teams cleared roads of wrecked vehicles and debris. Reinforced infantry, supported by artillery and renewed air superiority, pushed forward, gradually reclaiming lost ground and securing critical supply lines. The ability of the Allies to recover quickly highlighted the operational superiority that had been a decisive factor throughout the campaign. *****. The psychological toll on German forces was profound. Troops who had been promised swift victories found themselves encircled, exhausted, and outmatched. High command, including Hitler himself, faced the sobering reality that the Ardennes gamble had failed, depleting reserves and undermining the capacity for future large-scale offensives. Strategic options dwindled. The Wehrmacht was forced into a defensive posture, conceding initiative to the Allies for the remainder of the war. Morale, once bolstered by propaganda and initial confidence, suffered a devastating blow as soldiers reconciled with the futility of the assault ****** for the Allies. The battle reinforced several critical lessons: flexibility in command, rapid adaptation to unexpected threats, and the integration of combined arms, infantry, armor, artillery, and air power were decisive. Bastogne, in particular, became a case study in holding key terrain against superior numbers. Coordination between local commanders and higher echelons, coupled with the rapid redeployment of reinforcements, prevented the German offensive from achieving its objectives. Lessons learned in the Ardennes influenced subsequent operations in Germany, emphasizing the importance of resilience, intelligence, and supply chain security in modern mechanized warfare. **********, the human cost extended beyond immediate casualties. Soldiers endured frostbite, malnutrition, and psychological trauma that lingered long after the battle ended. Families mourned lost sons and brothers, communities rebuilt shattered towns, and historians would later quantify the destruction in terms of both lives and material losses. Yet the Ardennes also showcased extraordinary resilience, resourcefulness, and courage. Individuals like General McAuliffe, infantry leaders, medics, and engineers exemplified leadership and determination under extreme conditions, demonstrating that human will could shape the outcomes of even the most daunting military engagements. *****. The Ardennes offensive marked the last major German initiative on the Western Front. Its failure accelerated the collapse of the Wehrmacht, allowed the Allies to maintain strategic momentum, and directly contributed to the liberation of Western Europe. Bastogne became an enduring symbol of defiance and courage, while the lessons of logistics, combined arms, and winter warfare informed military doctrine for decades to come. The battle illuminated the brutal realities of war, human endurance tested against technology, strategy, and circumstance, leaving a legacy both tragic and inspiring. *******. The aftermath of the Battle of the Bulge had reshaped the strategic landscape in Western Europe, with profound consequences for soldiers, commanders, and civilians alike. It was a crucible of endurance, courage, and tactical brilliance, setting the stage for the ultimate conclusion of the war. The next section will provide a calm, reflective closure, exploring what this pivotal event meant for history, warfare, and humanity. *****. Ardennes, December 26 to 31st, 1944. Consolidation and counting losses. The snow had begun to melt, but the Ardennes still bore the scars of relentless combat. Villages were shattered, forests cratered, and roads clogged with destroyed tanks and trucks. American and German forces alike surveyed the toll. Thousands lay dead or wounded, frozen in the landscape that had been their battlefield. Survivors moved cautiously, scavenging supplies, burying comrades, and attempting to restore order amidst chaos. For the Americans, the immediate aftermath was a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Units that had held Bastogne and other strategic positions had prevented the German offensive from achieving its primary objectives. Commanders assessed the resilience of their men, the effectiveness of improvised defenses, and the ability of the Allied logistical network to restore supplies under extreme conditions. The reinforcement of American positions, combined with air support and artillery superiority, had turned the tide against the Germans. Yet the human cost was undeniable: frostbite, malnutrition, and battle injuries compounded the emotional toll. *****. The Ardennes offensive had been Hitler's last gamble for a decisive victory on the Western Front. Its failure left German forces severely weakened. with critical losses in tanks, aircraft, and experienced personnel. Supply lines were disrupted, morale diminished, and the initiative firmly returned to the Allies. For the Americans and British, the successful defense validated the importance of mobility, coordination, and rapid response, underscoring the strategic advantage provided by their logistical depth. The battle illustrated how overextension and reliance on surprise could be countered by determination, resilience, and effective resource management. The psychological consequences were profound. For American soldiers, surviving and repelling the German assault reinforced confidence and cohesion. Bastogne became a symbol of courage against overwhelming odds, and McAuliffe's defiant nuts exemplified the spirit that had carried the men through impossible conditions. German troops, conversely, experienced disillusionment. Initial confidence had been replaced by fatigue, frustration, and the bitter awareness that the offensive had failed. The clash between expectation and reality weighed heavily on morale, and the psychological strain foreshadowed the final months of the war for German forces in the West. Estimates indicate that the Battle of the Bulge resulted in approximately 19,000 American soldiers killed, 47,000 wounded, and 23,000 captured or missing. German casualties were similarly severe, with 15,000 to 20,000 killed, tens of thousands wounded, and over 20,000 captured. Armored and artillery units on both sides suffered extensive losses. Hundreds of tanks were destroyed or disabled, along with thousands of trucks, jeeps, and artillery pieces. The destruction of infrastructure and supply lines further hindered the ability of German forces to regroup, amplifying the strategic consequences of the failed offensive. Civilians in the Ardennes endured profound suffering. Many towns and villages were reduced to rubble, homes destroyed, and winter supplies ruined. Refugees fled through snow-covered roads, often under fire or in harsh conditions. Food shortages, exposure to freezing temperatures, and the disruption of local governance compounded the human cost. Relief efforts were slow but began in early January, coordinated by Allied forces and local authorities. Civilians, caught in the crossfire, bore witness to the raw scale of mechanized warfare and the brutality of total war. The initial analysis of casualties, strategic consequences, and human suffering revealed the scale and significance of the Battle of the Bulge, yet the long-term implications, both operational and psychological, would resonate beyond the immediate battlefield. The following section will explore the continuing consequences for the remainder of the war, including shifts in German strategy, Allied momentum, and the lasting legacy of courage, resilience, and tactical ingenuity.